Welcome back once again to PDM Vlogs. My name is Sam, and this week I thought I'd do a bit of a tutorial. So last week's video I was showing off this 30-year-old Hi8 camcorder, and I briefly touched on the transfer process that I used. And I thought this week I'd actually kind of explain it fully and go over things like the OBS settings and exactly what sort of equipment you need and why I think it's better than using one of those cheap Amazon transfer devices. So this method is mainly for obviously camcorders, VHS players, that sort of thing, but it should work for any kind of device with an AV output, either with the RCA, red, yellow and white, or with SCART cable as well. It should all work through the same principles. So PS2, Xbox, like the original one, Gamecube, Nintendo Wii, that sort of thing. It should all work for this, but I'm going to focus specifically on VHS and sort of analog tape transfers. Now I'm working in the PAL format because obviously I am in England, not in the EU. I made that joke last week, so we use 25 and 50. But if you're in an NTSC region, the principles are the same, but you've just got to remember the frame rates need to be like 29.97 or 59.95 or something like that. For this transfer process, you're going to need a few things. Firstly, you'll need a computer. Mac or PC will both work fine. You'll need, of course, your AV device. This is your VHS player or your camcorder, whatever you're going to capture the footage from. You'll also need an AV to HDMI upscaler. This one is called AV to HDMI. You can find them on Amazon for around about £10, something like that, maybe $10 to $15. This is what's converting your analog signal into an HDMI progressive signal. And then the main bit you're going to need is the Elgato HD capture card. I'm using the HD game capture. It should work with the HD60 or any kind of similar HDMI capture devices, but Elgato I know works. You'll also need, of course, an AV RCA cable. This is the red, white and yellow cable. This is how you're going to connect your AV device into the converter. And then you're also going to need at least one HDMI cable. You're also going to need OBS, also known as Open Broadcaster software. It's a free program, and of everything I've tested, OBS just seems to work best with the Elgato card, so I'd recommend using that. The Elgato software does not seem to play ball with the settings that you need. If you also want to monitor your footage without delay, because the Elgato I know does have a bit of latency, you can have another HDMI cable using the Elgato's out, and that will give you a feed on another monitor that has no latency, so it might help for sort of finding the exact point on your player or your camcorder or something like that. If you are capturing from something like a VHS player that only has a SCART output, you're going to need one of these. Now the key thing and the most important thing is to get one with one of these output switches. So normally when you plug one of these in, it's only for input, so it won't transmit signals out the other way. So you actually need to set it to output, so the signal's going back out into the upscaler, into the Elgato and then into the computer. Otherwise, I tell you now, it will not work and you'll be a bit annoyed with yourself. These are only about £5 or £10, so again, on Amazon, super cheap and they work great. Once you have all those items and you've plugged anything that needs to go into the mains, you then need to connect it all up. So firstly, from your AV device, which is your camcorder or your VHS player, something like that, you need to take your RCA cable, plug it into your HDMI upscaler. From the HDMI upscaler, you then need to go into the Elgato. That needs to be connected via USB to your computer, and then you can launch OBS. If you want to monitor, as I said, you need to just use an HDMI cable from the output of the Elgato, and that will give you a direct monitor. I will also say that a lot of these upscalers do require a bit of USB power, so I've just got mine plugged into a spare USB port on my computer. So once you've got everything connected, you're all set up, you need to set up a scene in OBS. So first, you need to add the Elgato as a new source, and it should show up. You might need to reconnect it a couple of times if it's not registering, but generally speaking, it should pop up fine. You then need to set the video size to 4:3 to match the source footage. I always set mine to 1440 by 1080. Now I know this is a little overkill, but it means that I don't have to resize it on a 1080p timeline, which is just a lot easier for editing. You also need to set the FPS to integer value and change it to 25. If you're using NTSC, I believe it's 29.97. If you have an Elgato HD60, you can try and capture it in 50 or 60, but that may introduce interlacing artifacts. So lastly, you need to go to the Output tab and set it to indistinguishable quality and set the format to MOV. This seems to be the most friendly format for editing software. The OBS output files tend to be a little bit funny, but this seems to be the best one. And of course, don't forget to set your recording path. And once that's all set up, you need to resize your source video, as it'll actually be stretched to 16:9, and you need to squeeze it back to 4:3 to fit the canvas by holding the Shift key and just drag it across. This stretch is due to the upscale process. It doesn't conform the image to native 4:3, so you need to do that manually. So the capture process, this is specifically for if you're using some kind of tape. Once you've got everything set up, it's literally just a case of finding the point on the tape you want to capture, start recording on OBS, press play, and then just play it through. And then once you've captured everything you want to capture, press stop recording, stop on the device, and that's it. It will save the video file and you're good to go. So I will say sometimes you might find that you need to trim or edit the final footage. You might end up with a bit of blue screen at the end or something. Now, I did mention this earlier, for some reason the OBS files, I don't know why, they sometimes are a little bit finicky in Premiere. Every format I've tried seems to have the same thing. MOV seems to be the most reliable format. It takes a little while to import. Once it's in, it's normally okay, but actually what I tend to do is bring the footage into Media Encoder first, change it to like MP4 or something. That seems to do the trick, and then it's super simple and easy to edit in Premiere or any other kind of NLE software. So it's a bit of an involved process, but I think the results are highly worth it. When you use one of those cheap capture devices that's sort of 30 to 40 pounds, it captures interlace usually. So even if you're importing at 25 or 30 frames a second, you'll get the horrible interlacing artifacts. I'll try and throw up some pictures now to sort of show what I mean. And I just don't think it looks great. With this method, you're not necessarily getting more resolution, you're just losing less. You've got a lot more control. The signal is converted into a progressive video format, so you're not getting the interlacings. And I think just the resulting image, you've got better color depth, the bit rate is better. And if you're trying to use it for something maybe more of a narrative film or like a music video and you want the best out of it, you want to avoid losing any more than you would already lose. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it. Bit more expensive, bit more involved, but I think the results are definitely worth it. So I hope you enjoyed that video and I hope it was helpful to some. If you've got any questions about anything I've talked about, just leave me a comment down below and I'll try and answer it. We are sticking to our every week upload. It's either Friday or Saturday. So there'll be something again next week. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. Notifications on, of course. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.